On this Monday night from Calgary, separation anxiety. Why an increasing number of Albertans want to break up with Canada.
We're not separating from Canada. Canada's separated from us.
How Alberta's Premier is responding and the pressure she faces. The push for Canada to be more energy independent.
We're tied so closely to the U.S.
The changes industry leaders are calling for. Campaign pledges the Liberals' ambitious plan to fix Canada's dysfunctional defence procurement process, and the unprecedented legal steps the Conservatives want to take to punish mass murderers.
Global National with Dawna Friesen, reporting tonight from Calgary.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We are in Calgary with 2 weeks to go until the federal election. Alberta is diehard Conservative country and many voters can't stomach how the Liberals have risen in popularity under Leader Mark Carney. Until 2015, a Liberal MP had not been elected in Calgary since 1968. In the last federal election, Alberta was a sea of blue again, except for 4 seats in Edmonton and Calgary, 2 Liberal and 2 NDP. This time, pollsters sense the Liberals could make gains in a handful of urban Alberta ridings that could be tight contests between the Liberals and Conservatives. The overarching ballot question here, what's motivating voters, is largely believed to be the same as the rest of the country.
Most people that you talk to, if you force them to choose what their most important issue is, might say either affordability or how to handle Donald Trump. But most folks recognize that those two issues are tightly intertwined.
But something else has resurfaced in Alberta, separatism. It's an old idea built on grievances with Ottawa, and now some Albertans want to take it a step further, not just leave Canada, but join forces with the U.S.
Hey, buddy.
From his ranch in Alberta's foothills.
We're not separating from Canada. Canada's separated from us.
Lawyer Jeff Rath is one of the loudest voices of Alberta separatism.
The citizens of Alberta will stop being overtaxed and overregulated by people from Ontario and Quebec that basically govern for their own benefit and treat us like a colony.
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state.
And a group in Alberta is apparently on board.
This is Rath on Fox News in March.
Becoming a U.S. territory or becoming or pursuing full statehood.
I asked him why he thinks the U.S. will treat Alberta better than Canada does.
It's in their interest to have as much oil and gas coming out of Alberta as possible.
Right, but you think you'd maintain your independence?
Of course we would.
Within the United States?
No, outside of the United States as an independent country.
Oh, so you're not talking, I'm just...
No, you're still stuck on, like, why do you want to join the U.S.? I told you, we're not necessarily going to join the United States. Okay. Right? So,
I thought I read that you were thinking of going down there to talk to the Trump administration.
Well, we are, and meetings are in the process of being scheduled.
He claims to have thousands of supporters. A recent poll found 30% of Albertans would vote to leave the Federation if the Liberals win the election. And 42% of Conservative backers say they'd want to join the U.S.
The whole 51st state debate has introduced a whole other element to this Alberta secession discussion.
Alberta's premier says no way.
I love Canada and I want Canada to work.
But she is under intense pressure from those within her own party.
Danielle Smith has surrounded herself with people who have been publicly writing and speaking in favor of separatism. The Free Alberta Strategy was written by her chief of staff, co-authored by some other folks in the separatist movement. So she's traveling in those circles, whether she believes it or not.
And now the man whose mantra, "The West wants in, built the Reform Party," is back. Preston Manning's message is stark. A vote for the Carney Liberals is a vote for Western secession, he writes. A vote for the breakup of Canada as we know it. And Carney gets no points for being an Albertan.
He's certainly not in it for us. He's not in it for Alberta. He's not in it for Albertans.
He's an Alberta boy.
Oh, yeah. Give me a break.
Oh, you grew up in Edmonton.
Yes, well, so what? We don't care.
A hard line in a province once again flirting with separatism. That separatist sentiment is still representing a minority in Alberta, but every Albertan agrees on the importance of the oil and gas industry. It is the lifeblood of this province and vital to Canada's economy, too. Last year, 97% of Canadian oil exports went to the U.S., so when President Trump threatened a 10% tariff on oil exports, Alberta felt exposed. Our Alberta correspondent, Heather Yourex-West, is with me. Heather.
Yeah, Dawna, that threat really highlighted the need for energy independence in this country. country. The energy sector believes it is possible, but it says big changes need to be made first. On campus at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, students are betting on a future in oil and gas.
Hopefully, yes.
So what is important to you in this election?
I think the most important is to utilize our resources and basically what we have and use that to our advantage.
In downtown Calgary, energy sector CEOs feel the same way.
We have one of the greatest natural resource bases of any country in the world, but we can't get them to markets. We're tied so closely to the U.S. that we're kind of tied to that market.
While it's always been top of mind within the industry, national polling suggests more Canadians are interested in building the infrastructure energy independence requires. Right now, Alberta oil is transported west via the TMX pipeline to the BC coast or east on the Enbridge mainline to be refined in the United States before returning as an import product to Ontario. TC Energy abandoned its plans to build East-West with the proposed Energy East pipeline in 2017, citing regulatory uncertainty.
It's been a tough decade. The most obvious would be Bill C-69. It was dubbed the No More Pipelines Act, and I think that we need a regulatory system that allows high-quality Canadian infrastructure to connect our resources to the world.
It's why last month 10 energy sector CEOs called on federal parties to simplify Canada's regulatory process and commit to approving projects within 6 months. Both the Liberal and Conservatives have made campaign promises to speed the process along.
We'll allow our incredible businesses to build pipelines, transmission lines.
Issue a decision after a single review on a project within 2 years instead of 5.
There's serious regulatory reform that's going to be required. And I think even if that happens, for the first project or two, it probably will require a level of government to come in and de-risk the project development.
Changes the industry says are needed now if Canada wants to lessen its energy dependence on the United States.
Heather, these promises to create an energy corridor across Canada, how is that going over with industry?
Well, the people that I've spoken with are just happy that this topic is getting attention. Mark Carney is promising to cut the approval process from 5 years down to 2, while Pierre Poilievre says his party will get it done in less than 1 year with a target of 6 months. The reality, though, some of this is outside the federal government's control. Indigenous groups in this country have rights that no government can ignore, and there could be environmental challenges pursued through the courts as well. So any plans to fast-track regulatory approvals are taken with this in mind. Still, there is broad consensus that the approval process within Canada does need to change.
Okay, Heather Yourex-West, thanks for being here. Thanks. There is one indicator that Calgary's economy is doing pretty well.
Sold $230,000.
Every year there's an auction of the canvas covers on chuck wagons, the tarps at the Calgary Stampede. Companies bid to advertise their logos on them, and this year $3.8 million was raised, the third highest amount in history. I caught up with auctioneer Rob Bergevin afterward.
That tourism is going to be as alive and well in Canada, and I think that Canadians want to spend some time in Canada, and Calgary Stampede is the greatest outdoor show on earth.
Manitoba's premier is planning to bolster that province's energy independence. Wab Kinew says he will not renew 2 contracts for some of Manitoba's hydroelectric power with Minnesota.
Manitoba has a wealth of Manitoba hydroelectric resources, and we should use them as a province to light up the north, to light up Western Canada, and to help us build trade corridors.
500 megawatts of energy, enough to power over 500,000 homes, will be used to service Canadian needs in the north. Now to the campaign. Liberal leader Mark Carney was in Montreal today, promising to increase defense spending and make buying equipment for Canada's military faster and less reliant on the U.S. Our chief political correspondent David Akin is covering the Liberal campaign this week. David.
Well, Dawna, the Liberal leader stood among the planes and the employees of Bombardier's manufacturing facility here in Montreal to argue that Donald Trump's threats is forcing Canada to rethink its defense procurement policies.
We have to give our armed forces the new resources that they need to defend our sovereignty
with a made-in-Canada defense procurement approach that will help our defense businesses to grow.
To fix Canada's slow and cumbersome defense procurement process, Carney would create a new agency to centralize equipment purchases with a focus on a Buy Canadian program. He'd also create another agency to focus investment in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other leading-edge tech in Canada's aerospace and defense sectors.
So this is the kind of thing that could be really impactful. A lot depends on whether or not the Prime Minister, if Mr. Carney is elected, really cares about this.
And Carney says he would provide more help to Canadian defense businesses trying to diversify their trade partners, including an increased Canadian presence in the Rearm Europe plan. All of these changes aimed at reducing, though not eliminating, the dominance of the United States in Canada's military procurement systems.
There's change to process in terms of speed, scale, expertise, and there's change to the relationships in terms of, or there's development of relationships with new, very large, reliable partners.
Now, Carney is presenting an ambitious plan to fix defense procurement, but the Liberals did that too in 2019 and 2021 under Justin Trudeau, and those procurement problems persist. Dawna.
Okay, David Akin in Montreal, thank you. The federal Conservative leader was also in Montreal today with another tough-on-crime message. Pierre Poilievre is promising to toughen sentences for mass murderers, and as Taria Isri reports, he's prepared to use the notwithstanding clause to do it.
It's a campaign promise that would see some of Canada's most serious offenders die in prison.
A life sentence should mean what it says, a life sentence. They should only come out in a box.
Pierre Poilievre wants to bring back consecutive life sentences for mass murder.
You should never be able to force the families of the victims to have to come and testify at a parole hearing so that they relive the hell that you've exacted on them.
To follow through on that pledge, Poilievre is vowing to use the notwithstanding clause, which allows Parliament or provincial legislatures to override charter rights.
I think this is a very dangerous step.
I believe that we should not be using it.
It really won't change anything in terms of public safety.
In 2022, the Supreme Court found consecutive sentences amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. The case involved the gunman in the Quebec City mosque attack, who killed 6 Muslim worshippers. His sentence was reduced from 40 years with no parole eligibility to 25.
Poilievre cannot point to one mass murderer who was given a life sentence who is back on our streets. It simply doesn't happen.
But victims' families say their rights are being ignored.
It should be challenged.
Karen Weeb's son, TJ, was murdered in 2003. She runs an organization to help others like her.
People say, well, 120 years, that's kind of ridiculous. But it isn't ridiculous to the families because it separates out their loved one and makes it clear that their loved one had value.
Several provinces, including Quebec, have invoked the notwithstanding clause, but it's uncharted territory for a federal government. Poilievre insists he would only take this unprecedented legal step to, in his words, fight crime. Dawna?
Okay, Taria Isri in Montreal, thank you. There's a tragic story in BC. Police are investigating a fatal hit and run that happened Sunday afternoon. A 6-year-old girl was killed when she was hit by a pickup truck at an intersection in Surrey, BC. A 7-year-old and 16-year-old were also taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Security cameras captured video of a truck speeding away from the scene. A suspect was arrested yesterday and has since been released from custody. Police believe the suspect may have been impaired by alcohol. The home of Pennsylvania's governor torched by an arsonist. Coming up, what the suspect is now admitting to. This is the view of the foothills of the Canadian Rockies. We'll be back from Calgary in a moment. This is the all-female crew that went to space today for the first time since 1963. Pop star Katy Perry and TV host Gayle King were among those who flew in Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin. The rocket launched from Texas. It went above the 100-kilometer-high internationally recognized boundary of space. From liftoff to landing, the whole trip lasted about 11 minutes. In Pennsylvania, a man accused of scaling a security fence and setting fire to the governor's mansion had planned to attack him. In a police affidavit, the man admitted to harboring hate towards Josh Shapiro. Shapiro and his family were home at the time and had just celebrated the first night of Passover.
We experienced an attack not just on our family, but on the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
It's believed the suspect used a hammer to break a window, then threw Molotov cocktails inside the home. The fire caused significant damage. It forced Shapiro and his family to flee. The suspect faces charges of attempted homicide, terrorism, and arson. Still ahead, the man who was wrongly deported from the U.S. to El Salvador, why neither country wants to return him. We'll be back from Calgary in a moment. The American president invited El Salvador's president to the Oval Office today. The two men discussed a high-profile case involving a man who was mistakenly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. As Jackson Prosco reports, the Trump administration now says the U.S. has no say in what happens to him next.
In welcoming Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele to the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump sent a chilling message about how far he's willing to go to carry out mass deportations.
You are helping us out, and we appreciate it.
Under the Trump administration, El Salvador has accepted deportation flights of its own citizens and of Venezuelan nationals. Men who were rounded up in the U.S., shackled and flown to a notorious mega prison in the jungle with no opportunity to appeal.
To liberate 350 million people, you have to imprison some. You know, that's the way it works, right?
But mistakes have been made, including the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland man who was wrongfully deported to his native El Salvador despite having legal permission to remain in the U.S.
Kilmar, if you can hear me, I'm still fighting for you.
After pleas from his family, the Supreme Court ruled the U.S. must facilitate his return.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
In fact, Trump wants to go even further, potentially deporting American citizens to El Salvador, too.
If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem.
People are going to be thinking, well, they already got one wrong. How many others could they get wrong?
Over the weekend, the U.S. pressed ahead with another deportation flight of alleged gang members to El Salvador, signaling it has no plans to scale back on this unprecedented strategy. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Next, why these Albertans aren't letting political differences cut them apart. You're looking at Calgary's Peace Bridge over the Bow River. Opened just over 13 years ago, it's now one of Calgary's landmarks. So much of political coverage is about the leaders' rallies and what people in big cities think. Well, we tried to get beyond that when we can. And on this trip, we went to High River, south of Calgary, and got invited in for a chat at one of the local businesses. It was a reminder that kindness still exists and talking politics doesn't have to be divisive.
No dress rehearsal. This is our life.
In the foothills of southern Alberta, in the town of High River, is a little shop called the Daily Mail, where they put the bar back in barbershop. Jason Cheesy Cheeseman is one of the regulars who stops by to sing and get a shave. What's the mood in Alberta right now?
Oh, it's all about...
We don't matter.
Yeah, that's true.
Owner Sean O'Brien welcomes everyone here.
And everybody's very blue here, right? Very, very conservative. So, yeah. I mean, that's really, it's a very kind of one-sided conversation for the most part.
That said, there's a desire to be decent to one another, to discuss, not dismiss.
Can we meet in the middle? Can we talk about what we... Can we talk about like what we could compromise on? Can we talk about what we can, do for each other as opposed to, how we can fight with each other?
And in this election campaign, is it possible Albertans will give the Liberals more of a chance now that Justin Trudeau is gone
And Mark Carney, a guy from Alberta, is leader.
I think at this point, Mark Carney is considerably more of a statesman than Mr. Poilievre. And I think that Canada needs that right now.
That's surprising to hear in a town that's home to Alberta's Conservative Premier Danielle Smith and birthplace of former Conservative Prime Minister Joe Clark. But Nick, who keeps the bevies flowing, says the prevailing mood is one of anger.
I get anger out of a lot of people. I think that people have a sense that the Liberals are going to win, and I think that that's frightening to them.
I've been taught in life that what we say in the West doesn't really matter.
The fact that Mark Carney is now the Liberal leader and Justin Trudeau is gone, does that make a difference to people?
I think so. It makes a difference to me.
I think we're so dyed in the wool here. You know, we've always been conservative, we'll always be conservative, and that's just the way it is, right?
He cut me off too.
What matters here are not the differences, but the connections, the human kindness.
I think that's the biggest problem right now is people are afraid to have these conversations with their friends and too worried that we're going to, rattle each other's cages over who we choose to vote for. It never used to be like that.
Maybe it can be like that again.
We're all friends. We don't judge each other here.
At least here, for a few hours, in this little corner of Alberta.
So great to be welcomed in there. That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Dawna Friesen. We leave you tonight with this stunning view of the Canadian flag flying over downtown Calgary. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.